Hey YouTube, welcome back to the Fantasy Football Profits. Today we're really excited to talk about some of the riskiest picks. This is just like our safest picks video. We're each going to do one player from each position, so 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 2 tight ends. This one's basically just the opposite of safe picks. These are guys who you're going to gamble on. They've got a lot of upside, but they've got a lot of downside. Now, this can be really good if you're rebuilding a team, especially you're in dynasty leagues or it's a redraft league and you've got to start from scratch. This can be really good to take advantage of players who are falling a little bit and gamble if you want to kind of go for it. But you also risk a lot. So that's what we're going to talk about. You have something to say, obviously. You got this look on your face.
Well, you know, with risky players, these guys you're going to hear, they are far too talented to ignore. But because they are a risky pick, there's things you may want to do with them, like you may want to handcuff if it's a running back or have a deeper bench in that area, whatever it might be. So we're not saying not to take these guys, but to understand the risks that go with taking them and maybe some of the things you need to do to adjust to those risks. So.
Exactly, but before you can take a really risky fantasy football pick, you have to have a draft. Rob, tell us about our fantasy draft board kits.
So we've been working with another fantasy company out there called the Fantasy Bros. That's BROS. They got some great products out there. They sent us a few free products. One thing they sent us was a draft kit. If you're not using draft kits, I would encourage you to do it. It's going to make your draft run so much smoother, professional. It's great. It speeds things up. I love the stickers. I love the whole thing. And on our last video, I talked about how back in the day, you know, we had an overhead projector that we used. We thought it was so cool 20 years ago. But you had to flip it over, and once they flipped the sheet over, you couldn't see who was taken before. And then I had my wife years ago to have your mom go out, and she would take boards that she read out by hand with Sharpie markers, do it all, you know, and it was nice, but it still wasn't quite right. And then we found a few years ago draft kits, and I love these things. They're great. The stickers speed up the process. They make it run smoother. It's easier to go back when you're plugging information in, whatever it is. So I would encourage you to try draft kits. And the one draft kit that we have found up to this point that we think is the best is from the Fantasy Bros. They've got all the other things that we've enjoyed in a draft kit, but they make it reusable. So that's like an added bonus you've had at this point. And I think you can check them out. Where are some of the places that you have them linked up with us?
Yeah, exactly. So you can check down in the description. We have a link to it. You can go check out on Amazon as well as on our website. You can go to our products and then the drop-down menu. Also, we have a link on our homepage and on our rankings page. So you can check that out. Fantastic draft boards, look really nice. There's lots of images for you to see once you click on the link. But they're very nice, would definitely suggest it. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I definitely prefer to have in-person drafts. Some people get excited to do the online drafts. It doesn't feel right to me, you know, but oh well. Anyways, we can just get right into it now. Rob, do you want to start with your first risky pick?
Yes. So my first risky pick is Deshaun Watson. Now I broke it down in the other video on safe picks, 3 things. Safe production, what does he cost, what is his health, so I can determine if he's a safe or risky pick. Let's look at production for Deshaun Watson. Well, last year in 4 starts before he injured his ACL, 4 games leading right up to it, he was playing really well. Hit quarterback ratings of 125, 120, 103, 107. During that same 4-game stretch, he had 16 touchdown passes with 1 rushing touchdown. That gave him a pace over that, that 4-game stretch where he would have had 64 touchdown passes in 16 games. Even looking at the stats he had for the 7 games that he played, that was still remarkable. He was on pace as a rookie to have 43 touchdown passes. Okay, so was he productive last year? Obviously, yes. This guy was very productive. He's very talented. The concern that I have, it was only over 6 total games, really. He only started 6 games. He played in 7, but only started 6. Now, when I think about guys like him, we can get so hyped up on quarterback. Think about Matt Castle. Had a few good games there, and New England got a huge contract left there and found out that probably not a great starter. I think about Nick Foles. In his second year, he goes out and has 27 touchdown passes to only 2 interceptions. Now, he had a beautiful story last year. I love how it came out. I love how they won the Super Bowl with Nick. But, I mean, we have to be careful before we overreact to a guy who's got a very small resume. Let's talk about what he's costing you currently. I think this guy, I love Deshaun Watson. I think that he's very talented, but he is so hyped right now. His average draft position, he's a 2nd quarterback taken behind only Aaron Rodgers. That means they're passing up on Russell Wilson and many other guys that are really proven. And I think that's an overreach when you consider the fact that, 1, he only started 6 games in his career, and he's coming off an ACL tear. I feel like it's buying a car without test driving it at this point to draft him that early. So he's going to cost you a lot. Now let's talk about his health a little bit. Okay, so last year, he tears his ACL. It's a grade 3 tear, okay? And he did that in practice on a non-contact drill, And then back in 2014 in college, He also tore his ACL. That was also suffered in practice in a non-contact drill. I find that to be very concerning that both of those ACL tears happen in non-contact drills, especially when you consider the style of play where he runs, he cuts so much. This is not a pocket passer that's maybe moving a little bit. This is a guy that he depends on his legs quite a bit, and now he's had 2 significant ACL tears, so that's concerning. I love his talent a lot. I think he's got all the skills to be a great quarterback. I think he's got a high ceiling, but picking him where you're going to have to take him in the draft, according to his current draft position in mock drafts, I think makes him a very risky pick at this point. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, especially when we talk about second-year quarterbacks who rely on their legs. Guys like Cam Newton. Cam Newton came out his rookie year and ran for 14 rushing touchdowns. Like, I don't even believe that. When I was like, how many did he rush for? I wanted to check the stats, and I was like, 14? That's insane. Running backs are lucky to get 14 rushing touchdowns. Many are lucky to get 4 or 10. But anyways, the next year, Cam Newton basically cuts that in half to 8. Simply, a lot of times, rushing quarterbacks come out their first year and they just shock teams.
Robert Griffin III.
Robert Griffin III is a perfect example, another guy. But then you know what happens the second year? Defenses figure them out, and the coordinators and the team say, all right, you have to learn to play the way the NFL is expecting you to play. What really wins, you need to be a pocket passer. And I think that we're going to see a huge decrease in Deshaun Watson's ability to run from the injuries and just simply from the fact that they want to stop him from running to keep him healthy.
Yeah, we talk about making adjustments. So here's my take on Deshaun Watson. I think he's very talented. I think there's a lot of risk that goes with him. But if you feel like you got to draft this guy, I'm not a huge proponent of having a backup quarterback on your bench, but I would say in his case, you got to handcuff him with a solid backup because you just can't trust him at this point.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great analysis. One other thing, if you guys want to hear about another safe quarterback, you mentioned Russell Wilson. Go watch our safe picks video if you haven't seen that, and talk about why he's a far better pick with much safer, far safer potential, whatever you would call it. And of course, go to our quarterback rankings. You can find out exactly where we would take Deshaun Watson and some other guys that we would take ahead of him, just to give you plenty of options. In this video, we're only discussing 2 players from each position, but you really have to know every player at every position if you expect to come out and have a solid draft.
Yep.
All right, so a really obvious pick here, Andrew Luck. All right, let's just get the bad out of the way. It's been basically 2 years since he's played in an NFL game. He came back recently and finally started throwing the football after like 260 days, I believe it was. Something around there. Really doesn't matter the exact day. And you know what happens? He is actually only throwing a high school football. Well, now they have him throwing an extra heavy football, but he hasn't really done work with his receivers yet, and he doesn't really have great receivers, if you're being honest. That's not the best receiving core, especially outside of T.Y. Hilton. Also, another bad news is last year their offensive line ranked 27th in pass blocking efficiency. Sounds like all bad. What's the good on Andrew Luck? Why is he possibly worth taking a risk? Well, first of all, here at the FFP, we don't take risks on quarterbacks. We wait. And we're just going to let whoever fall to us. But if you're going to reach, here's a guy who could be phenomenal. First of all, his offensive line was just as bad in years past. It's no worse than it has been. In fact, that's probably why he got hurt, because it was so terrible. In fact, I believe it was a little bit worse. In fact, his weapons receiving are a little bit better. They drafted Hines, who can catch out of the backfield, which is great news. Andrew Luck, out of every quarterback in the NFL, when he was playing, targeted his tight ends more than any other quarterback, which is huge because he's got Jack Doyle and Eric Ebron. Those are a fairly solid number 1 and number 2 tight end options. So I think that bodes really well. T.Y. Hilton's a nice deep threat, and then basically they just need one other wide receiver to fill a small role. I'm sure that they can find a guy to do that. He's been very, very productive. Coming out of college, I wasn't a big fan of him, to be honest, but I was completely wrong. He's averaged, over his career, he's averaged 30 touchdowns per 16 games, so basically 30 touchdowns a year. And since 2014, he's averaged 36 touchdowns per 16 games. So since 2014, for a 3-season stretch, he's averaged 36 touchdowns a season. If he plays, if he is healthy, he is a 35 touchdown guy. I fully believe it 100%. The question you have to ask yourself, is he ready week 1, or is it going to be week 2 or 4 or 8? When is he going to play and get back to the Andrew Luck that we know? That's kind of what you're gambling on. Right now his ADP has him being taken as the 11th quarterback. So that's not terrible. You can sit and take basically the second to last starting quarterback, but you definitely, like Deshaun Watson, are going to have to handcuff with another guy because there's a very good chance he struggles early.
Right, I think that's a good breakdown. I agree with you there. So let's get into my number one running back, risky running back we'll look at. So as a Vikings fan, it's hard to say, but I gotta be honest, I think Dalvin Cook here's a lot of risk. I think he's got a lot of upside, but let's talk about his production, okay? Does he bring safe production? Well, he was explosive before his injury. He had a yards per carry for the year. He finished with 4.8. He showed he had good hands, instincts in the passing games. In 3 of the 4 games that he played, he actually had a yards per carry of 5.6 in those games. That was very, very solid. He was 3rd in the league in rushing heading into week 3 before tearing his ACL. Now, so I think this guy's got a ton of talent, but to say that he has safe production is a little bit of a stretch when you consider the fact that he's only really played 3.5 games in the NFL. Now, of those 3.5 games, he looked very productive. Now, coming out of college, they said that he was very skilled. He had great gifts. He was elusive, quick. Talent's not an issue for Dalvin Cook. For me, it comes down to health with him. The biggest concern, the biggest criticism you heard coming out of college and during the combine leading up to the draft was his durability. People questioned whether or not he could be durable. And then his first year in the pro, he tears his ACL. In college, twice he tore his labrum, and now he tears his ACL. It would seem to support the criticisms that maybe this guy's going to lack durability in the NFL. I think another thing that's going to hurt him a little bit is because if I'm the Vikings and I see this great talented back, but I see that maybe durability is an issue. Last year, Latavius Murray filling in did a fine and admirable job for him. I got to think that they're going to have a more balanced workload between the two backs this year, trying to keep Dalvin Cook healthy. That would lower his ceiling a little bit there. His current average draft position, he's being taken 13th overall and the 10th running back taken. So that means that early 2nd round pick, or in bigger leagues, that's a 1st round pick he's going to cost you. A 1st round pick for a guy that's got major concerns as far as durability goes. He's talented enough undeniably, but he's definitely a risky pick. He's a guy that he's going to be very hard to pass on. But I tell you what, if I draft Dalvin Cook, I'm kind of hoping he's just not there. I hope somebody else takes him so I don't have to even make that decision. But if I do take this guy, I'm probably going to draft a good 3rd running back on my bench, somebody I can trust just in case. That's just kind of where I look at him right now. Very talented, but also very much a risk. Thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. In fact, you'd be very tempted. You'd almost have to take Latavius Murray if possible. It would be a great backup because then if Cook goes down, then Murray's value goes way up. He could be an extremely very talented running back next year if Cook goes down. But yeah, it's a confusing situation. The biggest thing that concerns me is through 4 games, he dropped, I think it was 5 passes. A guy who is not a very physical runner and is designed to catch out of the backfield a lot, drops a lot of passes. Now, granted, I imagine he's working on it. He should be better, but there's really no guarantee if he struggled on the pass that he's going to magically have it all fixed this season. But that's a very solid pick. The upside is huge.
Yeah, they have said right now, as far as his recovery goes, Cindy's looking great. He's running, he's cutting, he's way ahead of his recovery schedule there, so that sounds good.
Yeah.
But once again, still a lot of question marks with this guy.
Yeah, I don't think the recovery is the issue at all for me. That's not the concern. Probably the re-injury is probably my biggest concern. But I'll get into talking now about my risky running back pick. All right, so Dion Lewis is my risky running back pick. Well, why is he risky? Let's just, for starters, just the fact that he's going to a new team. He went from the New England Patriots, who kind of running back gurus, who can take guys who you haven't heard of and go out there and play phenomenal. They are never drafting running backs in the 1st round. They're always taking these 5th, 4th, 3rd rounders and somehow are doing something with them. So there is a concern that he goes to Tennessee and they don't use him to his full potential. However, there is good news. He played really well in New England last year. He had almost 900 yards on 5.0 yards per carry and 6 rushing touchdowns with 36 catches, 214 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns. I mean, that's huge. And that running back by committee system in New England, I think that's good news. On top of it, the Titans sure have faith in him. They signed him to a 4-year, $20 million contract for a reason. So I think that he could definitely come in and get a lot of playing time. Another concern is Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is a good running back. Now, he struggled last year, but he showed some fairly solid potential. He had about 4.6 yards per carry last year, I believe it was. And at times, he seemed to shine. But here are why I think that Dion Lewis is kind of has a lot of upside on this risk. Now, like I said, it is a risk because there's another running back there. He could just get stuck in another running back by committee system with probably a bigger star. I mean, Derrick Henry's better than any other running back the Patriots have, so this is probably tougher competition. But at the same time, last year DeMarco Murray had 8 more carries than Henry, despite having only 3.6 yards per carry. So he was less effective, and they used Murray more. Why does it feel like the Patriots do not want to commit to him? Well, he only had 11 receptions last year. That's just awful. I mean, that's just bad. So I think that they're very hesitant to fully commit to him. But again, on the other side, we flip back to it. He's almost guaranteed to get like 800 yards and 6 touchdowns. I mean, that's what I imagine from Derrick Henry. So I guess the risk that you're taking is how much can Dion Lewis, take of that offense? How many targets, how much touches on the ball can he get? Well, right now his ADP has him 27th. That has him outside of being a starter. The top 24 running backs are essentially the 2 guys for every team in a 12-man league. Means he's a backup, so I think this is a very solid risk. He's got a lot of upside, especially in PPR leagues because of how he can catch out of the backfield. He could easily work his way up to a number 2 running back.
Yeah, I think about as you're talking there, you can actually hire companies to come into your company and announce risk management, And I think with Dion Lewis, that's what it's about. It's about managing your risk. And he's a guy that definitely is going to have value out there, especially in PPR leagues. But it's really where you can get him and where he's going to fall. And in some leagues, he's going to fall far enough. He's going to be a great sell. Other leagues, I think you're going to have to press a little bit to grab this guy. And I'm afraid of the potential running back by committee with Henry there. I think it lowers his production. I actually have him in a keeper league. And I was waiting the offseason to see where he landed to determine if he was a guy that I'd keep. I decided not to keep him now. I think I have better options out there. They're just, for me, a few question marks that I don't like. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, now we can get right into our wide receivers.
So for me, my first risky wide receiver I'm talking about is Keenan Allen. Let's talk about his production, first of all. Does this guy have safe production? Well, during stretch of his career, he's looked amazing, but he's had difficulty staying healthy, and we'll get to that in a little bit here. He had a good rookie season. He came out, looked really good. Struggled his second year, but now he come on his third year. Now he only played 7 games in his third year, struggling to stay healthy once again. But before he got hurt, through 7 games, he was dominating. He was actually on pace to finish with 142 catches, 1,577 yards, and 7 TDs. Then followed that up 2016. He was having a good game 1, looked really good in the first half. He had 6 catches for 63 yards. Then his season ended with an injury. Now he rebounded very well last year. He finished a full season. He had 102 catches, 1,393 yards, 6 TDs. So he's been up and down, but for the most part, when he's on the field, he's shown he can be productive. Okay. What is it going to cost you to get this guy? Well, right now, the fantasy pros have him in mock drafts being taken as 6 wide receiver early in the 2nd round. So that's a fairly high pick for this guy. Here's why I think he's a risk. It has to do with health. And this guy, in his career, has missed an average of 5.2 games per season. 5.2 games per season on average he is missing, okay? I'm going to read to you some of the injuries he's dealt with. But this guy's not only had injuries, but he's had some serious injuries. He had a lacerated kidney. He had an ACL tear. So I'm going to go back from 2012 to 2016 and read you the rap sheet of injuries this guy's had, okay? September 11, 2016, he has an ACL tear in his knee. November 2015, abdominal kidney laceration. That sounds brutal, by the way, lacerate your kidneys. So it was a terrible hard hit. October 18, 2015, he had hip sprain. December 2014, he had an ankle sprain and pull. December, the same week, he actually had a clavicle fracture. Okay. He had, in September 2014, a groin pull. Groin pull, I can't even speak tonight. A groin pull, he had a groin pull. In December 8, 2013, he had a AC joint sprain. November 2013, he had a knee strain. In October 2012, he had a PCL sprain. Back in March 2012, he had a ankle ligament tear. I mean, I can just go on and on and on. This guy has been just filled with injuries. Undoubtedly very talented wide receiver, but he carries a lot of risks, and you're going to have to get him as a 6th wide receiver early in the 2nd round. He's a guy that I say is high reward but high risk. He's a guy that can reward you greatly or he could burn you greatly. So that's my take on Keenan Allen. Very talented wide receiver, but very risky pick. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think he's one of those guys who I don't like to take risks, but he's absolutely worth it. They lose Gates, they lose Henry. Who does Phillip Rivers have to throw the ball? It's got to go somewhere. This guy's a target machine, especially in the red zone. Like, I could not be any more excited about what he can do if he's healthy. Another thing that I like about his list of injuries, it's long, but it's all new injuries basically. It's not like he tore his ACL twice. It just almost feels like he's just had really bad luck. Like the kidney laceration, like that doesn't, like, players don't get kidney lacerations from playing. It's not like happens all the time. Like, it just feels like he's just really unlucky and he needs to carry a rabbit's foot with him onto the field or something, you know? So I feel like this could definitely be a high upside pick. I don't imagine he's going to get hurt again this year, but
Yeah,
I
you
could
wouldn't
be
think
wrong.
so. I mean, on a positive note, last year he stayed healthy for a full season. Going into this year, perfectly healthy, so that bodes well for him. But once again, he has had a history of injuries, so.
Yeah. All right, we'll talk about the next guy. Injury has nothing to do with my guy. All right, so Allen Robinson. Here's why he's a risky pick. We just don't know what Allen Robinson we're going to get. In 2015, he had 153 targets, 80 catches, 1,400 yards, and 14 touchdowns, and man, did he look good. He looked unbelievable. Like, that Jacksonville offense looked great. People were hyped. They're like, man, this team could even make the playoffs next year. They're awesome. And then 2016, he gets essentially the same amount of targets. He only gets 2 less targets. He has 151 targets, 73 catches, but only 883 yards and 6 touchdowns. His numbers are just drastically cut and just seriously struggles, and everyone's left wondering, like, what's going on with Allen Robinson? Well, like I said, this has nothing to do with injury. Although last year he did tear his ACL, he had ACL surgery. All reports is that he looks very good. He's practicing, he looks healthy, he looks fine. That's not why I put him on this list. I know that we talk a lot about injuries as being part of the risk. I think he's going to be fine, and maybe I'm just being blind to the issue. But the question is honestly, what guy are we going to get? Like I said, he was very good, and then he was very bad. This year, he's playing with the quarterback Mitchell Trubisky, who only threw 7 touchdowns last year. If he'd made no improvements and had the exact same stats again, then Allen Robinson would need to catch 100% of Trubisky's touchdowns to have just a pretty good year with 7 TDs. Like, that's a major concern. Like, seriously, we had talked about this earlier, and I just laughed. Like, if Mitchell Trubisky doubles his play, if his statistics get twice as good as last year, he throws an embarrassing 14 touchdowns. Like, that quarterback play scares me. But then you think about 2015. Who was his quarterback? It was Blake Bortles. Was it really that much better? Yeah, it was probably a little bit better, but let's not act like Blake Bortles is Ben Roethlisberger here. So I guess the question you have to ask here is, how much improvement is Mitchell Trubisky going to make, and how are they going to click together? So yeah, you are risking a bit, but as ADP has him taken as the 18th overall wide receiver, it's not a horrible risk, but it definitely is a risk. I could easily see him with over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, but I could also see him with 800 yards and 4 touchdowns. So there's a huge gap there. I guess you just have to decide for yourself what you think he's going to do with Trubisky under the center. What do you think there, Rob?
Yeah, he's another one that's had some big numbers. I think it's going to be hard to pass this guy up. He's got legitimate wide receiver 1 talent, but he's in a very questionable situation there. I think another concern that I have, one, he's going to face Xavier Rhodes twice. We know that Xavier Rhodes has shut down opposing teams' number 1 wide receivers consistently. And Detroit's quarterback there, what's his name?
Slay.
Slay is also in the same thing. So 4 games, he's going to have some really tough matchups there. I do like Allen Robinson, but I like him more, if you're in a dynasty league, I like him more in 2019, honestly. As that offense develops a little bit. I think this year he's going to be quieter, but yeah, I think there's some definitely risk there.
Yeah, definitely as that number 1 wide receiver facing a number 1 corner could be an issue, although he did it for Jacksonville. So, maybe that's the same situation. Like I said, the question is, which Allen Robinson is going to emerge, 2015 or 2016 Allen Robinson? But now we'll move on. You can talk about your tight end. I'm excited to get to mine, so let's just roll through this.
The tight end I'm going to talk about as a risky pick is Jimmy Graham. I'm going to talk about first, what does this guy cost you currently? And I'm surprised about this. His average draft position, he's the 4th tight end taken. He's being taken ahead of Evan Ingram. I think that's a major, major mistake. And if you go to our tight end videos, you can find out why we think that's a major mistake. So what about health concerns for Jimmy? So if you look, he's been pretty healthy in his career, minus the leg injury that he had surgery on. Although the concern I have is after that leg injury, it would appear that he's kind of looking a step slower. You know, his we'll get to this, but one of the reasons why we say that is last year his average yards per catch went down to a career low 9 yards per catch. That was pretty bad. Last year he only had 520 receiving yards in a pass-heavy offense. You know, playing for Seattle there. Now he did have 10 TDs. The guy's big. He's 6'7", so he's always going to be a great target in the red zone. But a lot of people, I think, are making the mistake that going to Green Bay playing with Aaron Rodgers is going to be a huge boost for them, and I think that couldn't be farther from the truth. One, if you look at tight ends that played for the Packers, historically just don't produce big numbers. They love to stretch the field. They look down there. They got a lot of other weapons, and so I don't see him having a huge year. I think also added to that, they also have Mercedes Lewis and Lance Kendricks, who are not going to be obviously ahead of him on targets or on the depth chart even, but they're going to steal some targets from the guy. Now, if you look at, just to put in perspective, just how little production the Packers get out of their tight ends, consider this. In a 2-year stretch, the Packers tight end eclipsed 39 yards just twice against divisional opponents. Just brutal. Since Jermichael Finley's career ended with the injury, the Packers simply haven't been able to get production out of that position. Now, they tried to address it. They drafted Richard Rodgers in the 3rd round, 2014 draft. They went into free agency, and they brought in some big names. I know last year, Martellus Bennett, everybody was huge on the guy. Remember that? Like, he's going to have a huge year. He's playing for Aaron Rodgers. We actually came out, if you look at our site, and we said stay away from Martellus Bennett, and we were right. He didn't do much there. In fact, last year, between Kendricks, Bennett, and Rodgers, all three of them combined only had 54 catches for 596 yards. It's not very good. They had Jared Cook there a couple years ago, too, another guy they thought was going to have a great year there. He was very quiet there. So I think there's a lot of question marks. And for me, it's really hard to qualify or quantify this thing. But the one question mark I've always had is why the Saints traded him away. He was at that point, I think, 28 years old, really still in the prime of his career, looked great. They loved him there, very productive. What did they see in him that traded him away? Maybe that drop in production is something they anticipated, things that we can't see here, but the coaches saw and the staff saw there. And so I think right now, where you have to draft him, what he's going to cost you with the upside, I think he's a little risky there.
Yeah, I think that's solid analysis. One really thing to note is I've been just preaching this lately to everybody, is you have to think about what we don't know. You can be the greatest NFL analyst in the world, but when you're not working for these franchises, when you're not in there in the meetings when they make these decisions, there's simply stuff we don't understand. Why would a pass-heavy offense in Seattle with essentially no weapons? I mean, when your best receiver is Doug Baldwin, good, but your second best guy is Tyler Lockett. Why are you letting Jimmy Graham go? I think that's a major concern, and I think that honestly, quite honestly, they're on to something about him just aging and being a step slower. Yeah, so I completely agree with you about the downside of Jimmy Graham this year. All right, so now O.J. Howard, huge upside, huge downside. Let's just get right into it and not waste any time. He had a really good rookie year. Now, I want to stop and compare him to Evan Ingram because only 3 tight ends have ever had 500 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns or more in their rookie season. Now, because Evan Ingram did it last year, O.J. Howard was really underlooked. He's been very underlooked for a while now. Last year, he went out and had 26 catches, 432 yards, and 6 TDs. That's a very good year. 6 touchdowns for a rookie tight end is very effective, and he almost hit the 500-yard mark. 432 yards isn't bad. He also set a rookie record. He was extremely productive. It took the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a while to really start using him enough. They just simply weren't using him as much as they could, but when they did, he was very effective. He produced a passer rating of 151.9 when targeted. That's a rookie record for tight ends. I mean, when you look at that, that's almost a flawless passing record when you throw to him. That's crazy good. He's a big body. He's like 6'6". He's huge, but he's also fast. He's known for his ability to run vertical routes, be specifically dangerous and seam routes. So why is he a risk? Why am I not just hyping this guy? What are the concerns? Well, the first concern is Cameron Brate. Cameron Brate is a very good tight end. Last year, Cameron Brate had 48 catches, 591 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Brate shows no sign of slowing down. They liked him. They worked him in. There's a reason that O.J. Howard got 26 catches and Brate had 48. He had almost double the amount of catches. They really like Brate. And it's a concern for me that they like him that much because my question is, O.J. Howard may be great, but at that almost elite level of efficiency when thrown to, I don't imagine he's going to repeat that again this year. Teams will key on him a little bit more. He's going to need more bulk to get more touchdowns and more yards. And how much more are they going to give him the ball when you have Brate out there, even if they're running a 2 tight end system? And then, of course, this one's obvious, but Jameis Winston suspended for 4 games. It's not even about Winston being a really great quarterback throwing to O.J. Howard, or his backup Fitzpatrick being really bad at throwing to his tight ends, or being a really bad quarterback. It simply comes down to the fact that changing quarterbacks all the time slows down an offense. It messes things up. It makes it extremely difficult. How are you supposed to get in a groove with your quarterback when you play with a quarterback for 4 games and then boom, right in the middle of the season you switch to another quarterback? I think that really is going to slow things down, especially with Cameron Brate going to be there to take a lot of targets away. So high upside, high downside for me.
Yeah, I wasn't sure we were going to go with that. Suspension is actually 3 games. But here's the thing with it. It's not just the suspension. If it was only 3 games and he was done, like, you've got to have serious question marks about the long-term play of Winston in the NFL or on that team. People are starting to really question where he's at. He's had a number of character issues on and off the field. And so beyond that 3-game suspension, I'm starting to really have great concerns about Winston there. Who knows what else is going to pop up, honestly. So, yeah, I definitely agree with the things you're saying there. And I like Cameron Brate. Like you say, he's very good. And he's essentially, you got the running back by committee. This is almost tight end by committee.
Tight end by committee. Please don't start that. We don't need that in fantasy.
Yeah, especially a position that's so difficult to find quality production anyways.
Well, the Bucs do everything by committee. They have quarterback by committee now, too.
They do.
Oh,
so,
man.
Well, thanks for joining us here at FFP. Once again, we love your comments, good, bad. We love to hear it. Subscribe, like, get your friends involved, whatever it might be. Once again, we appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for helping us grow the community. I'm getting excited. Football season's getting closer. Anything that you want to add to that?
No, you know what? Just go in the comments and tell us about the risky picks that you're going to be taking. In every draft, you have to take a risky pick. So let us know what risks you're going to take. As always, we thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day and God bless.